Good evening and welcome to tonight's Medtronic Diabetes webinar. Tonight we'll be talking about insulin pumps and children living with type 1 diabetes. Joining us as per usual are two guest speakers. From the endocrinologist perspective, Dr. Andrew Biggin, and from the Guardian side, Naomi. Just quickly, if you have the chance to post a question that you didn't do when you registered for the event, please feel free to reach out to us through our Facebook page, Medtronic Diabetes Oz, or using Twitter on the hashtag 640G webinar. Okay, just to do a quick introduction to our guest endocrinologist speaker, Dr. Andrew Biggin. Just to give you a bit of background on his career history, he was trained at the London Imperial College, where he achieved a PhD in molecular biology and a medical degree. Postgraduate training in paediatrics endocrinology at the Children's Hospital Westmead. He's currently a consultant endocrinologist at the Children's Hospital Westmead, St George Hospital, and Gosford Hospital. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Biggin.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, now from the Guardian perspective, Naomi Haynes. So now, Naomi experienced, when her son was diagnosed with diabetes, experienced feelings of, which are quite typical when we see a lot on our social media page, feelings of loss of control, shock, fear and sadness. She was fortunate enough to have a strong support network in their diabetes educators and hospital staff. On January 21, 2015, her son Xavier became the first person in the world to use the MiniMed 640G system with SmartCard, making her one of the more experienced people to use the actual device herself. So thank you for joining us, Naomi.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so look, our first question tonight is and this is something we see again a lot on social media. Does it really work? I worry about trusting in technology. Naomi?
Yeah, I have found that it really does work. I understand the hesitation in trusting the technology, and I was actually the same at first, but I know now it really does work. On the very rare occasion where the pump may have had something go wrong, it does tell you. So you've got that safety network there of, okay, it didn't work on this occasion, but it told us why it hasn't. It will let you rectify it very quickly as well. The only thing we've ever had go wrong was the insulin flow was blocked, or the bolus wasn't completed. That's the only two things go wrong this whole time. And both times the pump told us. So we're like, okay, we know why. We just did a site change, and the problem was fixed very quickly. So yeah, it does work, and yes, I do trust the technology 110%. It's my son's life.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Now, our question for you, Dr. Biggin. Is it safe for my child to use the pump while I'm not there? And are there safety features?
Well, despite it being, a fancy new gadget with a bright colour screen and fancy buttons, you'd think that the younger children will be playing with it all the time, but that's very rarely happens. Most of the time it's tucked out of the way, out of sight, and it's business as usual, and it's very rarely tampered with in that way. There are safety features on board the pump for that, so there's key guards so that you can't accidentally press a button and deliver medication without intentionally doing so. And there's also limits set on it, so you can set maximum daily insulin doses, you can set maximum bolus insulin doses, and also maximum rates for the basal rates. So you have to try very hard and intentionally to overrule the pump and to give extra medication. So in that regard, it's very safe.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Biggin. Now, Naomi, another question for you. Do you find it easier for your child to stay in control with the pump, and do you ever worry about the pump malfunctioning?
Yes, basically. I do find it easier, much easier. We're showing Xavier slowly carb counting. He is only 5, and he knows to ask us before eating, which is fantastic. We as a parents find it much easier to control. For example, it's just a case of putting carbs in the pump, and it kind of does the rest for you. SmartGuard is really good in assisting that way as well. with control, because it helps suspend on low, so your control is there. It helps you not be able to limit food, and it helps you track, where the trends are that's happening. So the control I'm finding with the CGM and SmartGuard is really very, very good, especially through things like growth spurts, which we've just had recently, and things like that, so you can adjust accordingly. And do I worry about the pump malfunctioning? No, I don't. I can't allow myself to, for starters. The thing is, the best explanation I've ever heard, someone said to me a little while ago, was you get in your car and you trust the car brakes are going to work. And that's exactly the same with the pump. You trust it's going to work.
Right, thank you very much for that, Naomi. So over to you, Dr. Biggin. This is a really, really common question again. Why do certain doctors recommend the pump early on, but others want you to get better control with injections? Does the pump not achieve this?
Well, my facetious response to that was you'd have to ask them. I think that the pump and what it has to offer is really the gold standard way of managing diabetes. It wasn't too long ago that we were doing urine stick testing for glucose and having 1 injection a day. That's now increased to 3 to 4 injections per day, and the pump allows you to take that one step further and actually mimic what the pancreas used to be doing. So I think part of the explanation could be that you're having to cope with the diagnosis of diabetes, you're having to cope with how to learn how to give injections, because if the pump does fail or malfunction, you'll have to resort to giving injections. So that's a lot to learn up front. If you were to throw a pump into the mix right from the get-go at day one, it could be a bit overwhelming. But I'm certainly keen to advocate for pump use sooner rather than later. And in terms of all the dose adjustments that need doing up front, you can certainly do that just as quickly and just as efficiently using a pump. So the pump certainly achieves that.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Biggin. So Naomi, just over to you. We live near the beach and have always enjoyed time in the water. Is the pump really waterproof?
Yes. Very short answer. The very first thing that I remember, one of the first things I remember after taking Xavier for ice cream, was I took him to the pool, and it was really exciting to be able to see him just go in the water and not have to worry about anything. Xavier's done swimming lessons, he's done water play. I don't have to panic that, oh my God, he's going to go and throw water at his sister and something's going to happen. He's been to water parks, he's been to the beach, and there is not one single time where I've thought something's going to happen. So yeah, I've no hesitation saying it's definitely waterproof. Definitely, yes.
Right, thank you very much for that, Naomi. So back over to you, Dr. Biggin. Someone submitted, I want my son to move to a pump. Do you find there are any common issues with children using pumps, and how have you seen parents overcome these issues?
Well, the two biggest issues, I think, are firstly the fear of or overcoming using it at school. So just like anything else, it needs to be supervised to make sure it's all done correctly. And I think to help overcome that, people have got either teachers' aides at school or got teachers on board to at least oversee. They can be provided with information cards so that they can follow the steps of what needs to be done in terms of being able to administer a dose of insulin. And to help from the carb counting point of view, rather than teach the whole world how to carb count, which would be ideal, would be to put stickers on the lunchbox items. So if you eat 2 out of the 3 items, you can add up the carb content for those 2 out of 3 and just make sure that's what's entered into the pump. So that I think is one of the common issues that people face early on. I think one of the other things that comes up quite often is failed set changes or kinked cannula, so you're not actually getting insulin delivery, particularly when you've inserted a fresh insulin set. And the advice to overcome that would be to do the set changes early on in the day. You don't want to do a set change and then go to bed and then not realize it's not delivering insulin, potentially the following morning or late overnight. So that can be, quite easily done during the day or, early evening, so there's time to actually make sure that sugar levels are not climbing and that the thing's working. So I think that they're the two commonest issues that are very readily overcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Biggin. Guys, just a quick reminder, if you want to submit any questions that you didn't get a chance to when you registered, please feel free to jump onto our Facebook page. We have a post there waiting, so please don't hesitate. So Naomi, over to you. With the pump attached at all times, do you find it prevents your child from living a more active lifestyle?
Not at all. There's nothing that Xavier has wanted to do that wearing a pump or having an insulin pump has stopped him from doing. He goes to karate each week, he goes to swimming lessons. He is a very active little boy, a very normal little boy who's rough and tumble. Um, at school, he's out there with the best of them, running around, going down slides, jumping off castles, doing things he really probably shouldn't be doing, but they're kids. And it's not stopped him in one instance. Um, it's almost like it's bulletproof or something, I don't know, but he's not broken it yet. So, if my 5-year-old boy can get out there and do what every other kid can do and be active with an insulin pump, then great. Yeah, it doesn't hold him back one little bit.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Naomi. Back over to you, Dr. Biggin. In the long term, will a pump help my child avoid the impact of health issues?
Yes, potentially. And the reason why I say potentially is it needs to be used appropriately. So the pump is just a very efficient way of giving very small doses of insulin if necessary, or micro doses, and it allows you to give doses multiple times a day, more than you would necessarily give injections. So if you're actually entering the information into the pump and making it do what it's supposed to do, then you will get better diabetes control, you'll get a lower HbA1c, and it will certainly lead to lower risk of the later problems from having poorly controlled diabetes.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Biggin. Now, back over to you, Naomi. Does your son find the pump uncomfortable when going to bed?
No. He used to have he used to put it in with his Lenny. He has a Lenny the lion, and he used to sleep with that. Now we mainly use a pump pouch around his waist, so everything is kind of tucked away and all nice and close to him, so that when he rolls over, it rolls with him, and it remains untangled and safe. And he has no problem sleeping with it. It's great. So no, it's not uncomfortable for him, I don't believe. No.
I remember there was a post on our Facebook page you made of Xavier sleeping with the little Lenny the Lion doll with his pump inside the lion doll quite a while ago. So I think that's a pretty good indicator as well. So over to you, Dr. Biggin, for the next question. We've had great control with MDI since diagnosis months ago. Is there really any benefit with the pump over injections?
Well, traditional teachings are such that if you've got a good HbA1c and you're maintaining good control with injections, there isn't necessarily a rush to go onto a pump. But I would defy anyone who would prefer 4 needles a day over just changing a set twice a week. So I think that's one thing that's overlooked and cannot be, underemphasized, is that the lifestyle factors alone, in order to be able to have doses of insulin whenever you need them, to be able to correct for high glucose levels whenever you need to, and to be able to titrate that dose, and if you're sick, to be able to adjust your basal rates up or down accordingly. I think all of those factors mean that you could have potentially good control on needles, but you could potentially improve that even better by switching to a pump.
Right. Thank you very much. Naomi, over to you. What has been with the pump and social interaction, sleepovers, barbecues?
Xavier hasn't done any sleepovers yet. He's a little bit too young. I feel he's a little bit too young for that. So I think that's more of a mummy issue than a Xavier issue, but we'll get over that one day, and I'm sure that will be just fine, but I can't comment on the sleepover thing just yet. When it comes to things like barbecues, parties, social functions, I actually find wearing the insulin pump helps so much more than being on injections, in that you can put on a dual wave or a square wave, which is great because you're getting that little bit of insulin all the time. You know, with the SmartGuard and the Link CGM, you can see and track how he's going, and if he does suddenly drop low, then the SmartGuard's going to stop that. You know, I also find I don't have to say no to him. I don't have to say no. You can't. You know, you can't have this or you can't have that. He can. He can have just like every other kid. You know, within reason. I do say no because I don't want him to go absolutely crazy, but it's just normal. It's what you would want your child to have. And if I do misjudge, if I do get it wrong, because I'm only human, you're out and about, sometimes you actually do have to guess your carbs, then it makes it so much easier to correct later. You know, I can very easily track what's happening to him. I find it in social situations, going out to dinner especially, it's a lot easier. That's one of the main benefits. One of the main benefits for us was the social side of it, and that it was just much easier.
Right. Thank you very much, Naomi. Over to you, Dr. Biggin. Do you find many patients from managing diabetes by an insulin pump? If so, do these problems persist after using the pump?
Actually, surprisingly, no. And in fact, most families embrace and hit the ground running with the technology. And I think one of the important reasons for that is that you're not just put on a pump and then sent back into the wild, you know, to fend for yourself and adjust things accordingly. Just like at the beginning of diagnosis, there's a whole education process and bringing everyone up to speed. Like if you stopped most, you know, random members of the public and said, you know, you're going to have to do finger sticks on your child and inject them, you know, if they didn't have diabetes, they would say that they wouldn't be able to do it. And I think it's the same thing for a pump. It might seem fearful, but once you've gone through the tutorials and the whole education and team support, so, you know, they see a dietitian, they see a diabetes educator, they see the doctor, the settings are tailored to the individual. And so what happens is there's a whole support network to get them up and running and see them through those early days on the pump. So any problems or perceived problems are taken care of as part of that support network.
Right. Thank you very much. But Naomi, back over to you. What has been the biggest issue when it comes to the pump? It's easy to overcome.
Our biggest issue has been people scared if I do it. Whether the family that hurdle that we overcome. The best way that I found to overcome that is training. To get a Medtronic rep out, hopefully, you know, they're available, you arrange that, and get some spare pumps, and get them to touch it. Get them, you know, when it's not hooked up to a child and they know they're not going to hurt anybody, then get them to press the buttons and get them to realise that it really is that easy and it is that intuitive. And after that, they're much more at ease. And I have actually seen people's faces go from terrified to sort of a little bit surprised, actually, that, oh, is that all? I've actually had someone comment, is that all? And that was my mum. So, you know, that's a hurdle, and it's completely understandable. People don't want to hurt a child. So train them, give them a pump to touch, and help them get over that. So that's been my hurdle with that one.
Right, thank you very much, Naomi. Now, back over to you, Dr. Biggin. What sort of change in HbA1c have you seen from your patients as they start using pump therapy? And do you find the improved levels are maintained as they continue into their adult life?
Sure. Well, when you first put on a pump, your control for the first week or two might actually be a little bit worse. And the reason for that is if you're on 20 units a day, for example, on injections, the pump, you're usually on, 20% less insulin per day on that. But once those pump settings are adjusted to quickly take that into account, you'll find that control improves by at least a half, if not up to 1%. Some of the early literature studies showed, no gains at all, but as they've done more meta-analyses and more recent studies have shown that you can get at least 0.5% improvement in HbA1c, and you can get a further 1% improvement if you're combining that with continuous glucose monitoring as well. So the gains are certainly there to be had. And in terms of are those improvements, do they carry on? We have a large cohort of teenagers who kind of go off the rails in terms of managing their own diabetes. So when they're younger and the parents are managing it, control's fantastic. When that independence needs to be had, there can sometimes be a few bumps in the road. But then later on in life, they get on the wagon again and start taking care of their diabetes again. And we know that if you've got good early control, that improves or reduces your risk of complications down the track.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Biggin. Guys, just if you can take the chance to jump over to our Facebook page, just a quick reminder, we do have a post there, and if you have any questions you'd like answered, please feel free to post them up, and we'll see if we can squeeze them into this webinar. Thank you. Now, back over to you, Naomi. How has the pump affected your family life?
Prior to Xavier going on the pump and the CGM with SmartGuard, we got very, very interrupted sleep, as does any parent with a type 1 child. Since he's had that, since the CGM with SmartGuard has come along, we've had better visibility of his levels overnight. So we've been able to adjust his insulin accordingly so that we're getting a nice flat line most of the time, thank goodness. On the rare occasion that he may drop low, then we are safe in the assurance that SmartGuard will suspend prior to it happening, so he's not dropping as low. And we've been able to get much better sleep, which is important. It's important as a parent, as a human, as a person to just be able to function. So our functionality as a family, we're not snapping at each other, we're getting more hours sleep. So that's probably one of the biggest pluses that we've had.
Thank you, Naomi. So over to you, Dr. Biggin. Do you find your patients become more involved in their diabetes after being on the pump?
Usually, but it really depends on the individual, and it's not absolutely required. The good thing about the pump and sitting down over time and regular reviews with the healthcare professional is it can be really tailored to the individual in terms of what they eat, how much they eat, how frequently they eat, what their exercise is like, and sick day management. It can all be tailored very specifically to the individual. And some families do lots of pump adjustments and settings changes between 3 monthly visits with the healthcare professional, which is fantastic because those are the families that tend to have better HbA1cs because their settings are being optimized more frequently than every 3 months. But likewise, we got some families who are a little less keen to be changing the pump settings and who are in closer consultation with their healthcare providers for that to happen. But I would certainly recommend that that's done at least 3 monthly. And if things are not going right, to touch base with your healthcare provider, even via the phone or email, to make dose adjustments between those visits as well.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Biggin. So look, Naomi, over to you for our final question. What would be your one piece of advice to parents considering an insulin pump?
My one piece of advice would be don't be scared. It was the best decision for our family and for Xavier's management of his type 1 diabetes that we have ever made. It's given so much freedom to what we can do, to what he can do. If you are concerned, speak to the people around you. There's a lot of support out there. You just have to ask, and it is daunting, but if you take that leap of faith, then you will very quickly find out that it's the best leap of faith for your family that you've ever done. It's been an absolute life changer for us and for Xavier, and I can see no way in the foreseeable future that we will ever stop pumping because it will change your life.
Right, thank you very much for that, Naomi.
Can I just add to that last comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to say, if you don't like it, you can always go back to injections. And I can honestly say, of the hundreds of patients that we have on pumps, I can count on 3 fingers those that have actually gone from a pump back to injections. for various other reasons, but it's certainly something that's taken up and embraced.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Biggin. Okay, guys, I'd just like to say a very special thank you to our two guest speakers tonight, Naomi and Dr. Biggin. I'm sure a lot of people out there have definitely gained some really great insights from what you've told us tonight. So thank you very much for attending. Special thank you to everyone else who has joined us tonight. I see we've got about 20 viewers, which is great to see. Guys, we've got a really great team here at Medtronic Diabetes Australia, so if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact us on 1-800-777-808 or reach out to us through our Facebook page, Medtronic Diabetes Oz, and also our website, medtronic-diabetes.com.au. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Have a great night.